All right, so like I was just saying, I don't know what I'm doing, so it's recording now, and I'm going to just say this is the second COscillator Forum. I appreciate everyone for being on and everyone who tuned in last week. We actually got some pretty good amount of listeners, which I was really happy with. Hopefully you get some more questions here. And this week we got Eric Bingham of Clandestine Recordings. He's a techno artist. He signed a bunch of cool labels. We got Chris the Solar, aka Chinito, who played in Miami and signed to some cool record labels and is a techno producer and all that fun jazz. And then we also have today, for the first time, Alex Whittier, who throws nocturnal parties, some underground techno parties in Denver that are pretty rad. And I guess we're just gonna talk about techno, more or less, and see where
Hell yeah,
everything goes.
Like that.
Yeah, just like that. And before we were going, a conversation was going that I had to cut off because it was really good. And Alex was talking about how he went into throwing these parties because he wanted to do it, not with any sort of profit incentive, and how he tried a bunch of formulas. So, you know, you were going on about that. I don't know if you could pick up, but you want to try?
Sure. I think really where that conversation started, you know, we're spitballing, getting to know each other. Eric and I are both in a restaurant industry, or at least adjacent to it. And, you know, he was mentioning that in order for that industry to succeed, people need to be comfortable with spending a bit more money. And that's been a real pain point in throwing events, not to get up on my high horse or soapbox right up front here, but yeah, I mean, I think that we've, as Alex was saying, we have tried many formulas, anything from putting on a $5 event where we were banking on making money at the bar and people not really seeing a value in the event. So they didn't come out because it was only $5. You know, I even booked a dual headline event with Lestasi Deloro from, what label is his big one? It'll come to me. And also, you know, his label buddies are acronym and things like that. And Field Recordings, that's what it is. And then, you know, also had Stefan Goldman, who, yeah, he runs his own great label, Macro. He has like Kink is one of his label mates and things. So yeah, I mean, we did that event for $10, just to try to get people out, and yeah, just it completely flopped. Now, are those big names in Denver? Not at all. You know, I think what we focused on a lot was a bit of education, and you know, with that said, you know, our incentive was a bit more in educating the market and not so much in making our return back. So yeah, I mean, we also most recently, one of the last events that we were able to do before COVID was with DJ Stingray, and you know, we're breaking down the numbers, seeing how many people we typically get at our event. We shaved that number down by 20-30% because we were planning to actually charge accordingly for what we wanted or what we needed to make back, really. And we thought with Stingray that would be a big enough name to pull out the crowd, and you know, it was $40 for a ticket, and yeah, we flopped on that one too. Like I actually felt like in both scenarios, unfortunately, I felt like I misrepresented the artist more so than I was let down by the financial misstep.
How do you think you misrepresented the artist?
You know, just didn't get enough people on the dance floor. You know, I think ultimately these artists don't tour around to, and I think Eric has toured, and I don't know Chris very well, but I imagine you guys could speak to that. You know, you don't tour to make money and play to nobody. You tour to play to a crowd and to catch the wave, essentially, and making money is additive to that more so. So I really felt like it was a bit of a letdown on our part, you know, and further, you know, really on my part, but on Denver's part as well, right? Like maybe I mispriced it, but nobody showed up, and so yeah, just kind of unfortunately feeling a bit of guilt from those scenarios. But there, I mean, I don't know what the formula is. We also did a $10 event with Sassmouth. That was one of our best attended events ever, and I think that has to do with part of the family atmosphere. I mean, she's played in Denver and Santa Fe, which Denver has great kinship with, for at least 8-9 years. But you know, we caught her hot off the tails of a great movement set with Acid Daddy and back to back, and yeah, that event really hit, so much so that I didn't get to go home as planned. So,
Well, you know, there's some hits and there's some misses, and you break things in order to figure out how to repair them, I guess, in some circumstances. And $40 is, you know, in my opinion, it's a little steep for a lot of people, you know, especially, you know, with the atmosphere of, you know, you can go see some artists in Denver, they're huge for basically free, but they're in clubs that can afford that sort of hit, and they make their money from the bar or their auxiliary clientele from their other rooms. But people don't think about that stuff when they're going out. They just make, I'm just guessing they would make an A-B comparison. Well, I saw Chris Liebig in Beta for free because of whatever reason, and DJ Stingray is charging $40, you know, and then you just kind of make these gymnastics in your head, even though, you know, DJ Stingray is an iconic Detroit techno legend. So I don't know, it's hard. Have you, what do you said you did get the Sassmouth thing to work out, and that, you know, there's that relationship between Santa Fe and Denver. Do you think there was any other factors, like the competitiveness of the night? Like, I think I remember the DJ Stingray night. There was also a lot of other events going on, if I remember correctly.
there were that weekend, but that night it was the only one. Yeah.
Oh.
And so Sassmouth is from Chicago. I mean, she was closely related with Smart Bar and that kind of thing. I can't accredit it to anything outside of community that pulled people into that one. You know, I was actually expecting to have a much kind of just like a family atmosphere. You know, the people that really introduced me to Sassmouth kind of coming and supporting. But like I said, I think that she played a set with Acid Daddy back to back for Movement at I want to say it was at the Honcho Brunch, I think. And it kind of like the rumblings like rippled through. And I think that that really helped that night. I mean, it was 3 or 4 weeks afterwards that we hosted her here. So yeah, we had I honestly, outside of community and a little bit of good luck, I don't know how that would have hit like it did, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, that sentiment kind of takes me back to our first event that we ever, I guess second actually, that we ever invited somebody international. It was Exos, and he was nobody at the time, and except for the legend that he was in Iceland. He stopped playing out for 20 years and came back to it. And as we were gearing up to host him, he was sending me pictures with him and Nina Kravitz, and I was like, what is going on? And then Nina started her label, and Exos re-released his best-selling record and got like a record highlight on RA literally the weekend before we had him. And it was, again, just kind of a stroke of good luck that I was able to use some of that marketing material to, you know, lift up an artist that I just loved and wanted to bring out here.
Mm-hmm. Maybe there's, have you ever, with seeing that, have you ever considered the role of, have you ever considered like seeing that and being like, well, maybe I should play publicist or something like that and try to get them some press, even not local stuff, but just like press in general, so I can use it and create some sort of like even reciprocity that might even help out the event?
You know, it was definitely something that's been considered, but I don't know how you guys feel, but I would think the nature of the underground is to kind of keep it in the community and not try to it's kind of, I'm catching myself here, fighting against myself, because
Mhm.
you don't want to under promote to where you misrepresent artists, and you also don't want to, at least I didn't want to over promote to where, that I felt like I was doing the job of many people, and oftentimes that's what a promoter does. Like in order to get artists out, I found them gigs across the country regularly. I've thought about starting my own agency multiple times. I mean, I have close friends that I think we'd be able to just stand on them alone, but it's just not something that I'm passionate about. It's not something that I feel comfortable doing, asking people to spend money. I would rather, spend my money and enable a good time rather than ask somebody, going back to the situation, ask somebody to spend money on an artist and the artist going out there and having a terrible time. So it's just, I could never get on board with it outside of using my network of friends from, Francis Harris opened up his club Public Works, which we threw I didn't put on any events, but we threw a few artists his way, and in order to get them out to Denver, and close with Smart Bar. So I'm not personally close to Smart Bar, but I have friends that are, so I was able to enable some bookings there as well. So it's nice to see this community be something that's more nationwide, worldwide, but it's not anything that I was ever willing to ask for money from, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and money as in you go and you get the promoters or that you either know or through connections to spend money, and then you get the agent fee from it, whatever it is, like 5
Right.
10% or whatever the
and actually what I worked out with
agent fee
those
is.
artists that I did kind of route through the United States is that they would play for me for a discounted rate per gig that I would get them.
Mhm.
So let's just say their fee was $1,500, then I would say, per gig I get you, I would like to take $300 off that instead, and you keep all of the $1,500 rather than me taking 10 or 15% of it or something. And so they get to come out here and they actually use my house as a landing pad as well, so they don't have to, if they don't get gigs throughout the week on Monday, Tuesdays, whatever, they come back to my house. So they kind of got lodging as well as I got a bit of a discount.
Yeah.
So, and then also, they got more gigs because I was booking them gigs as well.
Yeah, I mean that's it's kind of like it's almost like a barter economy. Like there's value that's being exchanged. It might not necessarily be monetary, but
Yep.
there is value that's being exchanged.
And with those artists that took me up on that, I would say that all but one of them became a very close friend. We're in touch still, and it takes a certain kind of person to be willing to fly across the world to meet somebody that they've just met online and trust that they'll, sell you into strong events that, fit their sound and fit their art form. I mean, really, it's almost like if you want to look at it another way, you're selling them into an art museum. Just the appreciation is different. It's expressed differently.
Mm-hmm.
So,
like a reciprocal sort of
yeah.
nature. Do you think that, like in all business, trust is obviously important, but do you think that the techno industry, I guess, if you want to call it that, relies more on trust than than traditional industries? Like, do you think that's just all across the arts, or do you think that's
I feel like I'm in the hot seat. Is this just a question for me or for everybody?
everybody? No, I don't know. Whoever wants to get in on
jury.
that. No. These guys are just critiquing. They don't actually
pretty
say
faces
anything.
on.
Yeah, they're nice, not talking heads.
We're just going to disagree. It's just something we disagree with.
Yeah. Eric will come in and fight you. That's what he's here for. He's just waiting for you to say something that he doesn't like. We could go this on. I don't know what that would be. It'd be like, okay, well, techno's just basic music. How's that? Let's start with that.
You know, to answer your question,
Not gonna fight you on that either.
Okay. Shit.
I do think that techno is a very communal, kind of worldwide. From the patrons to, as you work, you know, your way up the levels, from, you know, promoters to DJs and everything. I mean, I've met people across the country that online and sold them talent on, you know, a Tuesday night in Boston. Never met the guy, but you know, Błażej Malinowski came back and said that was a great event. I loved playing there. So the next time, or excuse me, that was FaZe that said that. So the next time Błażej came through, I sold him over to the same event, you know, and if COVID didn't get in the way, we would have probably moved forward with a partnership and that kind of thing with artists, you know, and yeah,
That would have been a big one.
Yeah,
Sure.
I think that there's I mean, for a Tuesday night gig, yeah, it's unheard of for something that like really pops off. So yeah, I mean, I think that there is a fair amount of trust, and I think that I think that a lot of that trust comes from many people in similar situations as me, or probably as you guys, that are taking these lower fees just to get out and do something that you're passionate about, you know. So many people in this industry are passionate and not just here for the money. So I think that there's a bit more trust because you want to experience more, do more, play more, or host more events. You know, I think that there's a fair amount of trust there. But I
think this industry, I think the techno side of this industry, I think it kind of weeds a lot of people out because of the underground aspect of it. Like if you're getting into electronic music to make money, you're not going to gravitate towards techno. You're gonna,
Yeah,
you know, if
that's
you're in
true.
it for the money, you're gonna go to something else. So
Right.
just by that nature of it, you weed out a lot of the people that are kind of in it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah,
And it tends to make the community a lot better, you know.
yeah, a good analogy is like being into techno for money is like being into banking for customer service.
Yeah.
Very-
But you know, if you think about it, it's
Not.
like if you think about it from like the sports world. I remember living in Europe for a long time. I remember talking to my friends over there about why soccer is not popular in the US and it is over there, as far as being like this massive sport with the highest paid athletes. And it's like, well, if you're an athletic kid and you're growing up and you play all these different sports and you've got natural skill and ability that you could be a pro athlete.
Oh shit. Right when he was about to say something good, you see
Yeah.
question for you guys?
It is, yeah. I'm gonna take this chance to grab a beer.
Oh, Eric, you're do you hear us? We're westwarding again.
Oh no, it feels like the Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. Can you hear us now?
Yeah, I got you now.
Okay.
Oh, okay, there we go. There
Right
we go.
when you were
He's back,
saying
he's back.
something good, this is what you were perfect last time. What the hell gives?
It was the system.
Oh yeah, the
Yeah.
Matrix.
Yeah, the Matrix stopped us.
Which means all of our music is actually digital if we're in the,
The
Matrix.
system.
So you know, so
The
you
system.
take yeah. Well, you know, if we're in the Matrix, all of our music is digital, and all the vinyl and all your analog synths are just, you know, digital anyways. If we're in the Matrix,
They're all digital anyway.
Yeah. So
Yeah, so I don't know where I got cut off. So
So you got cut off. You literally said, so you said why soccer isn't as big of a sport in the United States, and then you said it's because of the pros, and then it cut off for me.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
if you're an athlete, if you're a youth athlete, and you've got a ton of athletic ability and skill, and you're like, you know what, I've got the ability to become a professional athlete, you're not going to gravitate towards pro soccer in the U.S. where the average salary is under $100,000. You're going to gravitate towards football or basketball or baseball or hockey. And in Europe, it's the opposite, because the other sports that are big here, those leagues don't pay any money. If you're a talented, skilled athlete, you're going to be a soccer player, unless maybe basketball in an Eastern Bloc country, right? But the thing is that music, it's kind of the same way. If you're in it for money, you're not going to gravitate towards techno. But if you're in it just because you love the game, this is the game you're going to play.
You're going to pursue it and move to Berlin because that's where techno artists make money.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I was surprised to learn.
But
I watched this resident advisor documentary on Detroit, where you think Detroit has this huge techno scene, but everyone on there was like, yeah, everyone thinks Detroit has this huge techno scene. You should come here for techno, but there's no techno in Detroit except for movement, which I was surprised to hear. So,
Yeah.
Even in places like that, but Berlin.
I mean, I think that movement kind of is a misnomer for the scene there, if you will. Like it's an international festival. People fly all over to come to the foundation of the music, the genre that they love. And then if they ever come back again, they're not going to find it anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like thinking that back when the BPM festival was in Tulum and thinking that was the music scene there all the rest of the year. And it's like, no, that's a week and then it's done and it's all gone. Or like WMC in Miami, you can see every artist in the world in a week and then you don't see them again until next year's WMC.
Yep. But, speaking to your point, I've seen many friends, move to Berlin. I mean, going back to Stingray, for example, he lives in Berlin now. And I remember reaching out to Volvox, and she was going to give us a sweetheart deal. She lived in, I believe, Pittsburgh or Philly, and, flight plus $300. And then when we ended up booking her a year or two later, she had moved to Berlin and she had become a bit famous, and, she's playing Panorama Bar and this kind of thing. And I guess as famous as you can be in the scene.
Right.
But
underground famous.
Right. But went from $300 to $2,000 real quick. So, and that's not to diminish her value or anything. She earned that, and furthermore, we had to fly her further. We had to, she expected more, and she earns more. She earned it. So, I've seen a lot of friends take that route, and also. A lot of friends that speak to it, like Paul Fleetwood and Aaron Clark and these guys that have really sunk their heels into the United States and decided to stay here and trying to further the scene here as well.
Do you think?
It comes back to something that we were talking about before, and it comes back to.
Oh. Fire.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy.
Yeah.
Moving.
Yeah, your
It
mouth
happened
is
again.
moving.
It happened again.
Oh, there it goes.
I feel like we're the puppets and you're like trying to, what is it? The ventriloquist.
Puppeteer.
Yeah.
Oh, now I get you back.
Oh, there we go. There we go. There we go.
I got you back now.
Okay. Anyways, go on.
No, I was just saying that it comes back to the music consumer, the clubber, the person going to the shows, whether it's an underground show or in a nightclub, that the reason these artists make money in places like Berlin, it's because the crowd will pay to go see artists that they don't necessarily know, that aren't on the radio, that aren't famous, that aren't whatever. They'll pay money to go because they trust events or promoters or venues and say, you know what, if it's in this place with this promoter, I'm sure it's somebody good, and I'm going to go expecting a great night rather than going expecting to hear a particular artist that I know their name. And they do that in places like Berlin and Barcelona and things like that. They do that, but here in the States, nobody does that anywhere.
Yeah,
and so we get great artists in Denver, but people won't come to the shows. Like you said, you throw great shows with great artists, and nobody shows up because they don't know the name well enough. And it's like, well, no, it should be enough to say that this event is always a good event. So I'll pay $20 every time, no matter who it is. Yep. And I'll trust that these guys are going to provide a great event.
Yeah.
And people here don't do that.
And a couple things speaking to that, honestly, that's all I ever wanted was the trust. I again, going back to the finances, I didn't care about that. I wanted people to be able to know that if they went out to a Nocturnal event, it was going to be maybe not special every time, but it was going to be a high produced event with quality sound, maybe not visuals because, Nocturnal speaks to the dark. But yeah, I wanted people to trust us.
That's like the ultimate battle in our scene.
Right. Yeah.
Because if you look back, not even in our scene, but just like in hip hop or like in rock or whatever, in order to get that trust, the hip hop community had to do illegal parties in like basements or like abandoned warehouses or abandoned buildings. And these people would be walking by, or they'll get a piece of paper handed to them, be like, hey, show up. And all the b-boys and all the rappers and MCs will show up to this party that a DJ is hosting, and everybody's having a good time.
Yeah.
But it's an underground lifestyle that's like an ultimate fighting battle.
It sounds like there's a lot of overlap between the two communities in a lot of ways. Just music that's kind of culturally perceived as being for people who aren't like upscale citizens or something like that, where, it's kind of society's, I wouldn't say outcast, but people where, you think about them, and with techno, they're like, oh, isn't that just drug music? And you think about hip hop, you're like, oh, isn't that just like gangbanger music? And it's like, well, those kind of people sometimes show up and those sort of things do happen, but that's not really what it's about. It's that you've created this society, like society's created this impression from it that's pushed it into areas where these sort of things are more likely to happen because there's less control and there's less, there's less social stigma that prevents that from happening. So,
Right.
Of course people are going to do that. The thing is illegal to begin with, so why not do illegal things? Like, can you blame people? I can't.
Yeah. I mean, it literally attracts that type of atmosphere. If you're forbidding it, then yeah, it attracts that type of clientele and atmosphere. Not to say that I dislike that atmosphere, but yeah. And speaking to Chris's point, I would say that hip hop was really kind of birthed from the disgust of disco. You'd find those great those great drum beats, and just loop them eternally between tracks. And like you said, b-boys would come in and lay it down on top of it, And I think that there definitely would be a sense of crossover, no doubt in my mind, between the two, the way that they've grown. I mean, maybe not the way that they've grown, because hip hop really exploded. But every place but the United States, techno exploded a bit, or dance music exploded.
Yeah. Well, we exploded commercially.
Yeah.
Definitely.
The Diplos.
Good old
Yeah,
Diplo.
Diplos and like Bob Sinclair. Although Bob Sinclair back in the days was pretty good at house. But, I mean, everybody, they get their fame and stuff, and they get all the money thrown at them. And then you convert.
What about, I think this is a good time to talk about the big news this week, which is Eric Murillo, because he kind of took on that persona of, he's not only famous as someone who comes from the underground, but he kind of took this reputation with him that, people are now going to point to and be like, well, aren't all DJs like this guy? When that's not necessarily a fair thing to say. What do you guys think about the Eric, that guy?
See, I met Murillo once.
Did you really?
He's like a nice, outgoing person, always smiling. He doesn't talk too much. He does more like short talks and gestures. But I mean, if whatever happened, we're not gonna know till all the evidence is laid out in front of us, and
now it's never going to be.
Yeah, and then the absolute truth. So I mean, now we're in the stage where she says, and now he can't say. So now we only have a one-sided story.
I disagree. There are so many people that have spoken up online and personal accounts. And to be honest, I mean, I'm not trying to steer away from the conversation, but outside of saying that I stand with the victims, I don't have much to contribute to this one.
That's fair. Did you guys hear about the Derek May allegations that are going around now?
I just read about that.
Yeah. So this has brought out some other, other problems within the industry. Apparently, Derek May has a lot to answer for. And that's only just started to come out. there seems to be, like anything in these sort of situations, they're extrajudicial, so you don't necessarily know. There's not like a evidence gathering process. However, when you get enough people, like when it happened with like Bill Cosby, for instance, and you get like 20 people coming out, and now there's like probably a dozen for Derek May or something like that. You start to be like, well, is there something to this? And I would say even for myself personally, even like 4 or 5 years ago, I was like, oh, this is just some internet garbage, but now it's starting to seem way more legitimate with, just.
I think this is not an issue just in our industry. I think that it is pretty blatant that people of power tend to abuse power. And that doesn't go for everybody. I'm not trying to vilify every individual, but I do think that there are definitely cases, and for me, it's not such a surprise when they boil up.
I mean, it creates, when you've got a whole bunch of people in power, like you said, it's gonna bring out the best and the worst in people.
Yeah.
And so in any community, you're gonna have a bunch of scumbags. It doesn't matter who they are.
Yeah, that's
then
true.
you throw a whole bunch of money and power at them, and all of a sudden that's gonna blow up. It's gonna amplify who they are already. And I mean, we were talking about restaurants before. We saw this whole wave of this about a year ago with chefs in the restaurant business. And there was some huge name chefs that were brought down by things that they had done in exactly the same way. There were people who were icons of the industry because, this was their kind of deviance before. And then you throw some money and some power at it, and all of a sudden they feel like it's permission. And so it just blows up even more. And I think that's why you see it in, whether it's in politics, whether it's in, sports, with the whole Kobe Bryant thing was exactly the same. A close friend of mine from high school was the district attorney that prosecuted Kobe Bryant.
Wow.
So like those things happen because, those people were going to do those things no matter what. And being in a position of money and power gave them even more opportunities to be who they were going to be.
Personality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Give them more opportunities.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't.
And also in the nightlife too. I mean, you have a whole bunch of promiscuous actions from like both sides and both parties. So it's always, I mean, it's anything in entertainment or anything surrounding money, you're always going to have that type of environment. It's how you conduct yourself,
Yep. And the people who are going to be shitty are going to be, they're going to take it as an opportunity to be shitty.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
I think that's a good point with the amplifying, how money just is essentially empowers an amplifier, because, it doesn't make everyone horrible. It might put people, when they get in positions of power where they have to make tough decisions, and sometimes they have to screw people, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's their MO. That doesn't mean that they're, there's a difference between screwing someone in a business sense and screwing someone without permission in a physical sort of,
right,
assault sense. So
yeah, you're absolutely right on that.
There's a definite line that's drawn, and there's even large nonprofits where they gotta do great work, but occasionally they gotta get down in the dirt, and it's just how it goes. So
yeah, and I mean, you can take the whole sexual part out of it too, and you can switch it around to, if somebody has an addictive personality, this is going to amplify their addiction. If somebody has an eating disorder, or if they've got, depression issues. I mean, look at the number of artists that commit suicide. I mean, having money and power just amplifies kind of whatever you have going on with you. Yeah. And it's not gonna, people think that it's gonna, make everything okay. And on the contrary, just if you're a good person, you're gonna be a good person. If you're not, you're not. and you'll just have more opportunities when you've got money and power.
Right.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think, I've seen a lot of artists that I appreciate kind of step away from their role, or maybe momentum, if you will, to give themselves that bit of mental release, or mental health days or years. And I don't think that that's oftentimes the case. I think oftentimes that people feel the pressure to continue. And, I think that could translate even into, the subject matter. You've gotten away with it however many times. Why wouldn't you? And you're still getting booked, and you're still touring the world. Why wouldn't you take the step into doing it again?
Yeah. Consistency breeds commitment, I guess.
Yeah.
It's I wonder. Denver has a small scene for sure, and one thing I've noticed is not a whole lot of women in it. And is there something about maybe not Denver specifically, but the club mentality where it keeps other genders and other basically just other genders from participating? Is there do you think that's like a club thing that happens over here, and this is like really permissive in that, or do you think that girls just aren't into techno?
I've talked at length on this subject, so I'll give these guys a chance to speak first, because I have a lot of strong opinions here.
Okay, yeah. If anyone, I'm just asking a question. I have my opinions too, but I don't want to do.
Well, coming from me, I think it mostly comes from that hunger of attention. Like if you're a DJ or a big performer, or a really good supported local performer, then you'll catch the eyes of not to say in a bad way, but you'll catch the eyes of several women that might be interested in you, or the opposite. Depending on your preference. But I think in the long run, it's how you carry yourself. If you keep everything professional, and then sometimes you might even get caught up in a lie or something. You just never know who's down to take you down that path.
Yeah.
But
Got your kitty over there.
It is, yeah. He's a screamer.
I heard he got out not too long ago.
Yeah, he's since it's been cold, he's been much more appreciative of being an indoor cat.
Yeah, I bet. How long was he
Less
out?
motivated to run away.
Yeah.
Yes, when we got him back in, after it was only 4 or 5 hours, but once we got him back in, the following days he was screaming relentlessly. So yeah, he stopped screaming since it got cold. He realized what was going on.
Yes, he has a new appreciation for how good he has it indoors.
Yes, yeah.
That's good.
It's funny going back to your question, Alex.
Yeah, I didn't want to distract away from it.
Girls in the techno scene. It's funny because part of me wants to say that I think that a lot of it has to do very much like the genre thing that we were talking about before, where it kind of depends on what you're in it for. And I think people take their time to find techno. It's not something that people, start off with when they're in junior high and go, oh, I'm totally into this and I'm going to be into this forever. And I think that it's a vibe that certain people find because they don't find their home in other scenes. And they kind of work their way through other scenes. And I think a lot of that is why our scene tends to be a bit older and a bit more, what's a politically correct way to say it, more representative of the world. It's not, the frat boys and the party girls. It's not that, because they find their home somewhere else. And then everybody else who's like, you know what, I don't really fit here. I don't really fit here. I don't really fit here. Then they kind of find this underground scene and go, hey, everybody fits here. This is kind of cool.
Or
And so
nobody
they find-
does, but either way it works.
Yeah, you know, they find a home by, you know, kind of process of elimination. Like I can't find my home anywhere else. And so in one sense you could be like, okay, well, we have the leftovers. And in the other sense you could be like, well, we've got all the cool people that are weird and different and unique, you know? And I really feel like that's what it is. And I think that, I think guys, when you look at the different music scenes that there are, I think, it seems a bit easier for a girl to find a scene that she enjoys and fits with and support. And guys, you can feel kind of left out of those scenes. And there are some girls, obviously, that are in the techno scene, whether it's as performers or as part of the scene. But there's, you know, as you said, it's not 50-50. It's not representative of the population for sure.
No, it's
But then
definitely
you look at
not.
other scenes and it's flipped the opposite way. And it's probably because, you know, they're finding a home before they arrive to this, you know, or maybe they're finding it later. I don't know.
But you see a pretty even split in, let's talk, you know, other party music. Let's talk about jam bands, or let's talk about dubstep, even underground dubstep. You go to a lot of those shows, which I don't go to a lot of those shows, but I used to when I was living in Boulder. And, you know, I would say there's more men, but not discernibly more.
Right.
And I wonder what, you know, and this is something I've just been trying to wrap my head around, because I think, you know, there should be, you know, a greater representation of, you know, the world within the scene. And, you know, in Colombia, it was with techno, there was also a lot of women in techno who would go there. And, you know, it wasn't all Colombian girls. There's a lot of like European women and stuff like that who would go there too. But if anything, that, you know, represented even more on a global scale. So, you know, it was probably more like 60% men, 40% women, rather than, you know, the Color Oscillator statistics are 76% men. My artist DJ page is like 81% men. And it's like,
But
huh,
I would
you know,
imagine,
small
though,
sample
if-
size, but it's still like a sample size of 2,000 globally or something like that.
But what I would imagine is if you were to take, if your page was a you know, kind of commercial top 40 radio hits page, if it was a country music page, if it was even a hip hop page to a certain extent, I think that you would find that split would probably lean 50-50 or even 60-40 women to men.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
that's
but
kind of
why
what I
would
was
girls
saying,
get
they
into
find their home in other scenes,
Mhm.
and we kind of tend to be the last scene people come to, because they have to kind of work their way through deeper and deeper kinds of music to get to where we are, you know?
I wonder what else that is. I don't know. I don't think that's totally it. I really don't. Like, there could be some with it, but, you know, I know plenty of girls who are very exploratory musically, and they explore, like, a lot of different music. It's not like, oh, because, you know, so you're some hot girl, you're going to be, like, the deepest underground music you get into is Arcade Fire. I don't see that at all. Like, you know, you listen to even female producers, and there's, like, this certain, you know, aesthetic that goes with it. That's just, I don't know. So I don't know what it is, and I'm trying to figure that out.
That's also another thing too, is about music. One of the best things about music in general, of any genre, is anybody can start doing it. Like, if you dedicate yourself to it, and then you gotta expose yourself out there. Now, if the percentage of the party not wanting to expose themselves, then that's their lack, and you know, we won't never get to see that person or whoever develop.
Do
So
you think men are just more disposed to want to like have attention like
Show
that,
off.
and show off? I mean, that makes sense to me. And maybe that's why, you know, there's a lot more men, because everyone in the scene is a DJ or something like that. But I don't know.
as far as the DJ concept, I think there is an oversaturated amount of DJs. But the reason why I say that is because I go to some of these venues and I see some of these acts, and you can clearly see, like, I mean, for me, mixing and everything that has to do where your performance has to come in is like up here.
What do
And
you
if
mean?
you're like your mixing skills has to be, like for me, it has to be good. You have to program right, blend right, you know, follow the keys. And if you're gonna go off key, do it good, you know, like be sharp because it's a profession also and a lifestyle and a
But
career.
Yeah,
are you
women could
suggesting
do that
women
too.
can't do that?
Oh yeah, of course. But if if they want to do it, they can go out and do it. But the percentage ratio of them not wanting to come out and perform or start that journey like men do is not there.
I mean, yeah, but that's the question, right? Is why? And I do
Yeah.
hear what
I
Eric's
don't know.
saying. Is you know, I will say that yeah, techno was the last place that I looked, but it also wasn't after, you know, checking out hip hop and checking out top 40 and what like I grew up Mormon, you know, and I grew up with community. And when I saw the techno community, I mean, I got into snowboarding, which is kind of solitary, but also communal in a way. I mean, you go out with your buddies, you know. But when I found techno, I felt like it was home. You know, I felt like I had found it, and I don't know why. It just spoke to me, and I don't think that that is something that women can't experience at all. You know, I think that I would kind of pull the thread back to where the question was posed, which kind of sprouted out of a bit of sexual harassment. And I'm not saying that, you know, everybody's getting raped all the time,
Right.
but we like to hang out in the dark, and people get away with a lot in the dark. And with men, with people mistreating each other in the daylight, I don't know that women necessarily will always volunteer to go into the dark. Obviously, I mean, we're a group of guys, so this isn't a great platform for us to really delve into this subject. But you know, I've as a promoter, I have both been notified at the time that it happened and been able to activate and, you know, move people out. I've also, you know, barred people from coming to my events, which I think, and I will say this very boldly, I think that Denver has a very hard time looking at the bottom line and saying, yes, I'll take your $20 instead of, no, you don't deserve to be here because you've been a complete piece of shit the last 10 times or one time or whatever. I mean, I think there's a bit of a financial weight that a lot of promoters look to rather than standing up for what they actually, you know, what good karma or good, you know, being a good person would be here in Denver.
Yeah,
No, I agree with that, but I would also say that I don't think that really gets to the question of why you see so much less female representation in the techno scene than you do in other scenes. Because I think, you know, if you go, you know, for example, on the last one of these, we were talking about the fact that I had a club before in Boulder, and we had multiple different nights that were different genres of music. Same club, same lighting, same sound system, same everything.
Yeah, Absinthe
different
House,
genres of music.
right? Yeah,
Yeah. And
Sorry, what was it?
Absinthe House.
Absinthe House. Okay, I've heard of this. Yeah.
And so we had, you know, if you came on the nights where we had more underground music, where it was either techno or house or, you know, tech house music or whatever, it was 95% guys and 5% girls.
Right.
The same club, when you would have, you know, DJ PD playing the top 40 hits of the day, it was 90% girls and 10% guys. And it was the exact same club, the same bartenders, the same bouncers, the same lighting, the same sound. The only thing that changed was music genre. And that's why for me, it's I know that a lot of people don't necessarily work their way through it, but they might gravitate towards different scenes where they feel comfortable because they feel like they're already represented in a scene. and it's kind of a self-perpetuating thing. There aren't many women at our shows, so naturally women are going to feel less welcome and less, you know, they're going to feel less of that community if they're less represented already. And they're going to gravitate, whether they like the music or not, they're going to gravitate more towards places where it's like, you know, there's people who I relate to, you know, who I feel comfortable around. And I think that where we can take kind of more responsibility is really trying to actively market and push to those crowds, saying, look, we, you know, the techno and house world, this is, you know, these are genres of music that were totally spawned out of inclusion. Like there aren't other forms of club music in the world right now that came from more of a diverse, inclusive background than techno and house music. So this should be the place, and for some reason it's just not.
And in a lot of ways, I do think that it's kind of foundational, like informative music, if you will, to many genres. So I'd agree with you there. I guess I'll pose this question to a couple producers, or a few producers here. Would you feel comfortable in a top 40 club?
Oh yeah, I used to not be when I was a pretentious little hipster, but now I think it's fun.
Right.
You can put on some Kanye West and some Frank Ocean, and you know, you could throw in some Billie Eilish and whatever, and I'll get down. Some Lady Gaga, I don't care. You know, I guess at that point, there's a lot of top 40 music that everybody knows. It's just, are they playing the top 40 that I particularly like? Because, you know, I can go hear some top 40 stuff where I'm like, oh, this isn't really that great. But you want to put some, you know, Shaggy Thong song in between some, you know, housey Lady Gaga, and, you know, I'll get dirty. Man, like I'll get in it. So
I think it comes down to the individuals.
I'm different.
You know, we talked about this the last time about what other music we were into. Like, I think it comes down to the individuals, and I think that, you know, for all of the sense of community that there is in the techno world, there's also a whole lot of judgment, and there's a whole lot of people that are all about, I'm only into this and that's it and nothing else. You know, and so when I'm having conversations with people and tell them that, you know, I used to play guitar in the Stevie Ray Vaughan cover band, but I've been producing techno for the last 20 years as well. And I've also DJ'd a lot of different styles of music for different events. It's like you get this really judgy sentiment in our scene, more so than a lot of the others. You know, the others kind of look at us and laugh, where we kind of look at everyone else and laugh as a scene.
I think it's a valid point. And I think, you know, I'll use personal experience to expound on that, is that I remember one very loose night, I was depending on my friend to call the Uber home from Boulder to Denver, and we missed our ride. And the show had ended and he called it then. So we missed our ride, you know, 5, 6 in the morning, whatever it was. So we had another, 20 minutes to wait for the next ride. In that time, you know, and this is one of the first events that I went to in Boulder in Colorado. You know, the people were cleaning up, and me being me, I went up and just asked if I could help throw away garbage. You know, like they were doing a bunch of labor. So, hey, I'm here and I'm on your time and you're mean mugging me. So can I help out? And I think that it wasn't necessarily that instance, but there were a few other similar that kind of bought people's trust a little bit. But I had to actually get over the fact that they were mean mugging me. Now, I mean, I'm not suggesting that, you know, women aren't capable of that either, but if I was a cute girl, I would not tolerate that for a second, personally.
Yeah. Was that a community event that you're talking about?
Maybe.
The late ones that I can think of included around that time. Because, you know, not to kill their underground cred or anything, it doesn't, you know, but...
Community was very formative for me, and I owe a lot to that team, and I love and appreciate those people.
Yeah, but what's interesting about Community is it's run by women.
Yes,
so.
Community was ran by Kate Lesta. Well, she founded it, and Carl, and yeah, there were quite a few people that were involved. And you know, it was sister festivals with Mutech and Decibel. It was part of the ICAST network, so I know that there were a lot of women filtered throughout those companies, and honestly, my favorite DJ is a woman. She's, you know, I think that there's
Who's your favorite DJ?
You guys are gonna laugh, but it's a local, a Layla One. I think she's
Oh yeah,
the best DJ I've ever heard. I mean, when she's on, she is on.
I've seen her a few times, mainly in the community. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know,
how do you feel, you know, to kind of piggyback on the same question, you know, as a promoter, what are your thoughts on, you know, we talk about wanting to do what we can do to make the techno scene more representative for women, for sure. And how do you feel about all female lineups, where that goes? Because this is something super divisive. I've heard passionate arguments on both sides of this.
Same.
So I'm curious from a promoter what you think about that too. Because again, I've got my opinion, but I'm curious where it comes from your side.
So I personally wouldn't do something like that. You know, I do find myself to be a feminist, and feminism is about equality, although there are plenty of male-only lineups. Right now, I believe that female-only lineups are being treated as marketing tools, and
Totally agree.
I don't agree with that. Furthermore, I believe, I mean, I think I had a conversation with a friend who really pointed this out, and I think that, you know, if you were just to do an all-female lineup and not say all-female lineup, fine, right? Then that dismisses men, it dismisses non-binary, it dismisses queer, trans, you know, it actually is exclusionary more than it is inclusionary. So I don't think that I could bring myself to do it in the current climate, although I'm not opposed to doing it forever. You know what I mean? I think that there is a bit of just political atmosphere, if you will, that kind of exploits that lineup, if you will.
You know, it's funny you say that, because I was talking to somebody about this not long ago, and their kind of hypothetical question that they threw out there was, when you think about being inclusive and when you think about being equal and things like that, when is it beneficial to be, I don't want to say necessarily preferential, but to promote the fact that we're representing an underrepresented group, or we want to push an underrepresented group to the fore so that they can be better represented? And when does it become you know, kind of pandering to them to be inclusive? And my friend was, when we were talking about this, they said, think about think about the context of all female lineups or female DJs within the context of race as it is right now in the country. And would you say, you know, an all black lineup?
Right.
No, you probably wouldn't. But what he said on the flip side of that was, he said, okay, well, when does not pushing underrepresented groups to the fore become the equivalent of all lives matter? And it's like, well, I'm not going to point out these people who were underrepresented because that hurts them. And it was really interesting to think about it in that context, because, you know, it's like, well, it's interesting to see from both sides of that, really.
But it's also not just a polarizing concept, right? Like he posed he or she posed these two scenarios, but there's a lot of in between on that. And you know, I think, yeah, like when I said absolutely not, you would never throw an all black lineup. That would be a terrible marketing ploy. So why is all female lineup acceptable for some reason?
Because our female lineup is hot and might draw people in more than, you know, it might get that sort of marketing push that they want. Like you said, it's a marketing, you don't want to be exploited as a marketing thing.
Right.
I don't know. It might look noble on the surface, but in reality, it's look at you know, is it
trying to
make
money?
Yeah, exactly. Like it's almost like this exhibitionist sort of mentality. That's
right.
Well, there's another part of it too, though, and that is if one of the end goals of what we're talking about here in general is to try and make the entire scene and all of the events and all of the parties be more representative and more inclusive, would we see a case where promoting an all-female lineup would bring in a larger female crowd to expose them to our events in an atmosphere where they would feel more comfortable as a group going to an event, and then say, okay, you know, then go into the future saying, okay, well, now it doesn't matter if it's male, female, you know, or anywhere in between, we're going to do the lineups as we're going to do the lineups. And now you've seen everybody's inclusive, everybody's included, everyone's valued, everybody's, you know, welcome. And,
right.
and I think it's really weird because I can really see it from both sides. So I'm kind of curious.
So a few things to speak to, right? So I mentioned there's a lot of gray area in between. What I was speaking to in that scenario is that first of all, I you know, I booked a bunch of DJs, but there was only one that ever had on their rider that, and he was a guy, and he said that he didn't say who, but he required a female to be on the lineup. So hats off to him. That's great. You know, he's actually trying to encourage this upflow, and I think that you know, that's additive to the conversation. I will say that and where was I going? So the gray area in between would be to give women, and maybe they aren't the Alayla ones, but give women that are up and coming a chance to succeed, right? And put them on a lineup, make them the opener or the closer, whatever you trust them to do. But, you know, give them that opportunity. Sure, they're not the headliner playing. I mean, and I'm talking about after hours events, which is what we mostly did. So I'm not talking about that, you know, 2 to 4 o'clock hour. I'm talking about the 5 to 7 o'clock hour as a closer. I mean, people peel off and the community stays. The patrons, the people that are there paying the money for the headliner, leave, but the community stays, and then they learn about the DJ and they are educated about this artist as an artist. And they are not being propped up on some propaganda of their gender preference, which, you know, really is just a concept.
Yeah, I agree.
So question to that right there, like what you just said right there, that old saying, paying the dues, you know? So if you did pick out a girl or a guy, because I've seen it both ways, you put them up to succeed, to open up, or to start up a night. But when you put them up there, their performance is like it makes people turn away. Like it's not up to par. It's not the sound. Like it's not what you really are looking for. What do you do?
Well, isn't that the job of the promoter to promote the right, to make sure that slot does have the right sound? You know,
I mean, and that's another point of that gray area is that, you know, Denver's a very small market. So New York, I would say you could absolutely program a night to seamlessly run together with all the women, right? But here in Denver, I'm not saying that's an impossibility, but I think that there would require some collaboration and understanding between the artists. I mean, as a promoter, the idea is not to completely jar people so they are wondering what's going on when act to act shifts, right? So you do want enough change to where there's an understanding that there's a shift, but, you know, and this goes back to just the initial question. I mean, with 150 or 400 male DJs in this city, and like, I don't know, 15, 20 that I can think of women, I mean, how it gets difficult to fill every little slot, every little niche, every little support. And I'm not saying, you know, opening or closing, just like actually fitting the slot with the right sound for that night, you know.
And that's a challenge. That's a challenge regardless of gender.
Yes,
It's finding the
absolutely.
right person, the
Yeah.
right set. That's an issue
At the
no
right
matter what. That has
time.
nothing to do with anything else.
Yeah, it's nothing to do with your gender.
Yeah, there's a question too about within a scene, no matter where it is, but there's a question about, you know, chicken or the egg. Is it, you know, right now, the small number of female underground techno DJs in Denver is pretty representative of the small number of female underground techno clubbers in Denver. And is it better
Sure.
to drive the numbers on the dance floor by promoting the DJs, or drive the number of DJs by promoting, you know, more to making the dance floors more inclusive?
Ladies'
You know,
night.
what's that?
Isn't that usually on Wednesdays?
Shit, as a techno promoter, I'd take it any night of the week.
Yeah, right. Yeah, ladies get in for free dollar drinks. I don't know. Even that, you know, it does bring out women. I'm not going to deny it, but you know, it's also it has that air of you know, marketability, like that sort of exhibitionist sort of thing.
Yeah,
where
yes.
it's like look at all these tits and ass. Like
I mean,
everyone
ultimately,
everyone
though,
knows
if you wanna
why
be-
there's ladies' nights, and so you get guys to come out to buy drinks. Like, so I interviewed Tony Humphries. It was my first like major artist interview, and you guys know who he is. He's like, you know, one of the godfathers of house music. You know, the first Kiss FM mix DJ. You know, he's like made house cuts of, you know, Prince, you know, stuff like that, officially, and he's been doing this since the '80s. And what he'll always say is that what he made a big point is like, if you could get women on the floor, then you'll have a party, because all the guys will stand on the periphery. He's like, I've been doing this for 50 years or, you know, 45 years. And, you know, you'll see all the guys on the peripheries, you know, just kind of dancing, and no one will actually fill in the dance floor, but then the women fill in the dance floor. Then all of a sudden the guys start coming in. And it's like, you know, and so with that going back to the ladies' night thing is like, I see the benefit in it, but at the same time, it's to get that sort of, you know, exhibition at the same time. So, you know, maybe that's
right. And how to
that's
promote
the same.
more representation and more inclusivity without making it seem like, or without being actually motivated by just marketing.
Mhm.
Yep.
You know, it's a
I mean,
weird fine
furthermore,
line.
Like what you're marketing by marketing ladies' night is getting laid, right?
Right.
Yeah, more or less.
Well,
So-
Or
yeah.
the hope.
So going back to the original issue is that, you know, like women maybe not feeling comfortable. It's a I mean, and again, I keep thinking this. We're four guys here. Like,
Mhm. I know. I want to get like
so much.
yeah, I've wanted to get like this is only the second one, and
Yeah.
one of the things I do want to do is get like a women's like round table sort of thing. But then I think about, is that even right? Like, do I really want to do that? Because I'm always, you know, obviously it's a little different, but I heard this subject get brought up in like kind of the thing that inspired me to do this, which is the DJs and beers round table. Are you familiar with that, Alex?
I'm not, no.
So it's essentially something like this, where it's Truncate, Drum Cell, Chris Liebig, Radio Slave, and Dubfire. They get on and they do something like this. And
I think FaZe was on that.
yeah, he might have been on that. I don't think I saw that one, surprisingly. He might have been one of the first ones. But that makes sense because he makes hard-ass techno. Anyways, they got posed a question about the minority thing at festival, like filling slots at minorities. And Drum Cell is, he's about as minority as it gets. He's like Egyptian Mexican, which is, you know, pretty... That's a pretty serious, you know, as far as this pretty serious niche, yeah. And he's like, you know, I would be insulted if someone wanted to fill me in as like their affirmative action, you know,
Right. I
on
mean,
the lineup.
could you imagine? Like, I cannot even fathom you know, reaching out to a woman and saying, hey, I need a woman for the bill. Do you want to fill
Yeah,
it?
would you like to be the token on my lineup?
Right. Yeah.
Awful.
Yeah. Awful.
That's
It's so weird though to try and walk that line between being inclusive and being, you know, pandering, condescending. Like it's not that there's. I wish it could just kind of organically happen that it wasn't an issue, but you know, it's almost like no matter which way you go, you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't.
And I do think you're onto something. I think that if more women were on stage, then more women would stick around to support and feel included and feel like they were part of it, you know? That they weren't just kind of brushed to the side or there for a lay. I mean, and I'm not saying that all women do, but like, God, I think I was talking to a gentleman, he was probably twice my age the other day, and he was trying to understand these events that I put on. And the only way that I could really get him to understand is that our scene for dance floors is people go out for the artists. They go out for the music. They don't go out to get laid often.
There are too many drugs to get laid anyways.
Sure, yeah. Or even to get pissed drunk, you know, like that's just not the goal. Like it is when you go out to you know, bars or whatever, when you just are bar hopping.
Yeah.
So it's much more like I would equate it to a show at Red Rocks. You know, everybody that goes to Red Rocks is going there because A, they trust Red Rocks. It's a great venue. B, it's an artist that they really appreciate, and you know, they know they're gonna have a good time. And I think that you know, so many things kind of point to that with this scene. You know, from having a hotline that you have to call, and then you go meet a gentleman or woman or whatever on the corner of a street who gives you directions. I mean, you really have to try to be there. You know, there's a lot of effort that goes into it. So I think that, you know, if women were to feel more a part of, you know, feel more included, they would want to try to be there more often. And I think it is an issue in a way, and I think that obviously it's been brought to the forefront, and you know, cancel culture was a thing. I don't know where it is now, and
it's there.
I'm appreciative of it, and I understand why it's there. And again, I mean, I'll be on the side of the victims, and I'll trust these women. I mean, like, what incentive do they have to lie in most cases, you know? So I would say, I agree with Eric that it is kind of a chicken or the egg, but I would suggest that we do need to get more women up on stage and appreciate.
I'd be curious to ask, like you said, get the female perspective in these chats when we do these, just to be able to say from a female techno artist, what drew you to it? What could be done to draw more of you to this, more people who think like you? What would be an attractive way to make this scene attractive to more people?
Yeah, and I would like to facilitate that at some point. Like, this is the second one, but I've been thinking ahead because, you know, who knows how long the pandemic is going to go on, and you know, the first one got pretty good traction. So I'm like, is that a good subject? You know, at the same time,
bring them on board. Make it even. Make it 4 like on 4, 3 on 3.
Like a like a battle.
That way they don't feel like they're being ganged on or something.
Family Feud.
You know?
Yeah. I don't
be like the Brady Bunch.
Yeah. I could play Alice. I'll stay in the middle and moderate it. Everyone, I won't even talk. It's one of those things where, because I'm just, the thing that really, I'll go to shows at Denver and Boulder and all that sort of stuff, and but that didn't really ever feel like a scene to me in a lot of senses, because it was either infrequent or it was in clubs I didn't particularly enjoy. But the moment that really got me into techno was when I went to Colombia. I stayed in Medellin for 3 months, which has an amazing techno scene. Amazing. techno
Yeah.
scene. I actually have my, just little thing that I'm really excited about. And I'll actually probably talk about this tomorrow. I'm interviewing for Magnetic Magazine. I'm interviewing pretty much the biggest techno artist in Colombia tomorrow. So I'm pretty excited about that, and maybe I'll bring that up with him. But the cool thing about Colombia is, it's a very machismo sort of culture and all that sort of stuff, but it's very heavily represented by women, and there's a lot of women in the scene, and it's not, and I'm not saying it's all Colombians or whatever. A lot of Colombian women can't afford to do it, and if they can afford to do it, they're sex workers, and that's just the unfortunate reality of it in Colombia. I'm not trying to sound sexist. That's just how it is. You just talk to them, and that's just what it is. Like, it's so impoverished there. The only way to make real money as a woman there is depressing. But that's where a lot of the scene comes from. But there's also a lot of European women who come into it, and it just felt like very homogenous, and there was this like great sense of community there. And even if you didn't speak the language, or they didn't speak your language or whatever, there was a certain sense of belonging, even though I didn't really even belong there. And that's what really got me into the techno. How was I going with this? But and that's what inspired me to create this page. When I was over there, I was like, well, what can I do to like learn about what's going on in Denver? Maybe there is something there that I'm just not necessarily aware of. And I did learn a lot about it. And then people started joining the page pretty quickly. And then I started seeing those numbers of the 76% men. And then I started, when I do the SoundCloud, and, I would follow everyone on SoundCloud who I found was like a DJ and artist. And then they would go and they would follow me back, or I'd find out they liked the Facebook page or something like that. I'd be like, wow, these are all DJs, and they're all men DJs.
Right.
And if you look over in Colombia, it's not all women. It's mainly all male DJs over there, because they're very sexist in Colombia in a lot of senses. But it's represented by women, and it's represented for women all over the world, and it's really surreal. So I'm just wondering, like, what is it that pushes? Because they figured out a catalyst to push over the edge.
I do feel like when you have a thriving scene, it's going to, in general, meaning a bigger scene, like just more people involved, you're going to have more people included. And, I noticed that, you mentioned Colombia, but I noticed as well, when I was in Mexico City, same thing. Very diverse crowd, pretty evenly split male, female for the techno shows. Same thing when I was in Europe, very similar thing. And then you come here and it's not. And if you notice, what you don't have as much in those other places is other scenes that are much bigger than the techno or electronic scene, whatever that is in a certain area. So it is the popular music scene, even if it's not pop. And so here it's this underground side, back room, dark room scene, where it's the biggest event in town on a weekend is, a techno artist or a house artist or an electronic artist in general. And it's not, Taylor Swift. It's not, Jay-Z. There's not these massively huge commercial pop scenes. There are, but they aren't as much bigger than the underground scene as we have here in the States.
There are, but it's the same artists. It's the United States artists that are big. That Lady Gaga, and like they tour the world. Mm-hmm. So other cultures are still looking to American pop, but American pop might not be quite as big as it is in America. And yeah, they may, while appreciate that, they have a bit more leniency or freedom to explore within their own communities.
And when you look at events, and particularly club events, but also, after hours events, obviously are going to always lean more underground. But when you look just at club events and you go step outside of the US border, or maybe US Canada, once you get outside the borders here, the club events are house music and techno.
Yeah.
And for the vast majority. And here, we're the offshoot side club events, and the big club events are top 40 clubs.
Yeah.
You know, look, there's been a couple years out of the last 40 that the big clubs in Vegas have had electronic artists. They've always been tens of thousands of people listening to hip hop or listening to commercial top 40.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think furthering on that point that I would venture to guess that all of our formative years were spent in nightclubs and not in dingy warehouses. I mean, I spent time in clubs and I personally hated it, but I loved the music enough to continue to, you know, seek out these clubs, seek out these artists, whatever. But it wasn't until I went to a warehouse, an after hours event, that I actually felt like it checked the box. You know, like it was like, yes, this is what I've been looking for. And I'm not positive on this, but, you know, I think that nightclubs typically are a place that, you know, sure, you want to go out and have a good time, but they check your bags when you go and they check your pockets, they pat you down, you know, it's pretty invasive. So, you know, when you go to these spaces and you don't necessarily feel like, you know, your voice is heard, maybe there's not a woman on stage, or maybe you're being aggressed in some way and you don't have somebody on your side, why would you ever subject yourself to go into almost like an unprecedented situation in a dingy warehouse where, you know, you had to actively like get through the phone call, get through the checkpoint to then go,
You had to find it.
Yeah, it takes, like, if you already didn't have a good time and you were already dismissed in the past, why would you try actively to get further ingrained, right?
Yeah.
You know, we're as a culture, we're tribal, right? Everybody wants to be around a group of people like them, and they want to look for those groups of people. And, you know, going back to you know, the lack of female representation in our scene, I think it's because the tribe tends to be in the club, and the tribe tends to be already, as it is today, in those commercial top 40 venues.
Yes.
So when they go there, they find the tribe and they don't look any further because they've already found that group that they feel comfortable with. Now, how do we help our scene become another tribe that they feel comfortable in, you know, that they want to come to and they feel represented? And, you know, and again, is having someone on stage going to do that, or is finding ways to have them more inclusive, you know, have them more, I don't know.
You know, I think at least in Denver, there's quite a division between the two scenes. I don't know how it is in other countries, or, you know, I mean, I traveled minorly, but other cities or anything, but I think that the 2 a.m. shutdown, as well as yeah, this like you said, like, people find the tribe, so why look further? You know, I think that it's kind of a multifaceted answer here, you know, and obviously there are facets that we haven't even touched on and aren't aware of, as we're, you know, not part of the community there. So I mean, I think that yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think if we could move past this 2 a.m. shutdown, then it would solve a lot. But we also shouldn't depend on, you know, powers outside of our control to come up with solutions.
Have you guys, since you two are in restaurants, and this is a thing, and, you know, therefore by auxiliary bars in a lot of senses, you know, especially you, Alex, with Lodo's, and now the whiskey bar that's, you know, opening up, or I don't know if I'm supposed to announce that, but no one's going to watch any. Yeah, I don't know if this is really quite the crowd. There's not going to be a bunch of techno people who are like, oh my God, a Southern titty bar is opening up. Yay, you know.
It's so brutal.
That sounds horrifying to me. Like,
Yes.
I like whiskey and titties as much as the next, you know, man, but, you know, at the same time, I don't like that combination. But you know, but I think Have you guys heard more about how Polis wants to extend it? Is there rumblings within the industry beyond what I've just seen in the headlines?
I have to say, I feel like there's two things from that overlap between restaurants and bars and then the nightlife world that I think can have a positive impact coming out of this, being a positive byproduct of COVID. Is one is extending the closing hours later. I think are good for restaurants, for bars. It's gonna reduce crime. It's gonna make the nightlife better. It's gonna make the nights able to be better, so you can program fuller, longer nights. It's gonna open up more venues to things being able to be done there. So I think there's a lot of positivity from that. And the other thing that it'll have less of an impact on what we're doing, but the way that they're relaxing some of the liquor laws right now, being able to do alcohol delivery for restaurants, I think is a huge thing, and it's going to be a big positive. And one of the ways that it's going to be a big positive is for those of us in the industry, we know that the vast majority of the profit you make in a food and beverage business is from alcohol.
Right.
It's the highest margin part of your business.
60 to 70%.
Yeah.
Jeez.
And so being able to sell more alcohol from a single business without having to sell more alcohol to the same number of people and be dangerous about it is a gigantic plus. Being able to say, okay, I've got 100 people in my venue, and if I want to sell 500 drinks, I can either sell everybody 5 drinks, or I can safely sell everybody 2, and I can sell 300 drinks to go. So I can really increase my profit margin and make up my business viable without having to push it into kind of dangerous behavior territory. And so I think both of those things are going to be positive for the scene. It's not going to be so much kind of pushing booze in large quantities in a small amount of time. Like we're kind of forced to right now, where, I mean, when we had Absinthe House in Boulder, we would do 90% of our sales from 11:45 to 1:30. That was like 90% of our nightly sales.
You just come here.
It's like a binge.
So you just have to just cram it all into a short amount of time. Whereas if you can get that night extended, all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, in order to make my rent, I don't have to just like make this some kind of just craze fest. We can make this be a night, and we can create some atmosphere, and we can make, the music programming be, longer, more patient, give me a musical theme throughout the night rather than get everybody in at 11:30, get them fired up, get them drinking, and get them out, and that's just an awful.
Like a mad dash versus actually enjoying yourself.
It's just awful. Like I don't know any restaurant that would do it that way if they were given the option.
Right.
If you were given the option to do it the other, everybody would be like, well, of course we don't want to make it all crammed into an hour and a half.
Right. And I think to further speak to that point, if the bar hours get extended, then even people's interest in eating will also extend on an individual level. So then you can serve, instead of closing food at 11 or 12, you can close food at 12 or 1 and continue to make revenue there, as well as, that restaurant can turn into a bar at night and not have it be, okay, people maybe want to eat at 11, but we're done serving food. So we're just going to do bar. So now these people are going to get overserved, and it's going to become more of an issue. Whereas it could be, okay, we can still serve maybe a minor menu through until 1, and people can get their food and their beverage. And, the business will only stand to gain there as well.
When you touched on something earlier, when you were saying when you do after hours events, the people that come out for the headliner leave after the headliner, and then the real family stays. And you see the same thing in Europe with late closing hours or all night closing hours with bars, is that here everybody shows up at 11, drinks as much as they can, parties for a few minutes, meets someone and leaves.
Yep.
Whereas in Europe, it's like They show up gradually, the night builds, then you have a peak of your night that lasts longer, and then people phase out over the course of the late part of the night, and they leave bit by bit by bit. So the night has this even flow. And if you look, I mean, I'm sure you guys see it where you are, bar close in Lodo is an absolute shit show.
It's a mess.
Fire everyone up. You get them the highest energy you can in every one of the venues. You get them as drunk as they're going to be for the night, and then you throw them all out in the street. Well, of course it's going to be a shit show.
Yeah.
But if you say you can close at 4, some are going to leave at 1, some are going to leave at 2, some are going to leave at 3, some are going to leave at 4, and then at that 4 o'clock closing time, you get the trickle out of the last people, and you're not like forcing everyone together at kind of the peak aggressive moment of the night
to drunk drive and get in accidents together.
It's just the most awful model.
I mean, I think that there are a couple data points here. First one being that this is not the first time that this has been on the table. As a matter of fact, before COVID, I guess I'll start earlier, is that there were 2 votes in the past 5 years where the option to stay open until 4 a.m. was on the table. Another community, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, really rallied and did their part to prevent this 4 a.m. shutdown. So I think the other data point that's important there is that the actual police were on the side of staying open until 4. Just like Eric said, they were saying that there would be less work, less issues, and less drunk driving if we could stay open until 4. So, you know, there hasn't been a vote for, I believe, 3 years now. It's never been on the ballot. And I had been, corroborating with other promoters to essentially pull permits and do everything correctly so that we could throw a party outside a voting booth and basically say, everybody get down here and come vote so that we can stay open later. And, since COVID's come up, I don't know that that's necessarily an option. But I think that, our community rallies around the weekend. I don't think they really rally around politics. Now, on an individual level, I'm not saying that people don't. And I'm not saying that, people aren't promoting their political views day by day, especially in the climate that we're in right now. But I do think that people tend to, activate when they want to have a good time and not be as active when it is important to get up and support your community. And this specific instance being one that's kind of staring me in the face. There was a good guy, Paul Quenzi, who was putting on events here, and he interviewed John Templeton specifically on this subject. Why nobody showed up to the meetings, why he was literally the only person there at the courthouse listening to the debate against staying open until 2 or 4. And I think that there's a lot of formative information there. I think that part kind of goes back to where we started. Partiers in Denver wanted to be convenient. They wanted to be cheap. They want to see the best talent, and they don't want to care about it during the week. They want it as a release. So I think that it speaks to a bit larger issue than as a whole than just a 2 a.m. versus 4 a.m. issue.
Well, what about so I got to bring up two. It's not techno, but it is electronic music. Electronic Tuesdays is what made bass music essentially pretty big in Denver. Was
in the world.
Yeah.
Nicole did a great job of really bringing dubstep to the forefront.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's huge. You're right. It is the world. Like she was like.
Submission is a worldwide agency that, and they do very, very well to present the platform.
But they got big on Tuesday, and their club music, and it's not like dubstep goes any earlier than techno in the UK or where it's even possible. So, like, what could we learn from that model where it's no longer it's no longer a weekend thing, and it's very much community based, because that community is whatever your thoughts, whatever people's stereotypes are about it, I think are kind of unfounded, because it's a community. It really is. And it's deep, and it's entrenched, and it's global, and it's from here in a lot of senses. What can we learn from that?
Before, I feel like we shifted gears a little bit, and Eric was about to say something, so a chance to say it if you want.
It's all good.
Okay, that's fair.
Okay, I would say that there are some very strong communal events for techno. I mean, I think that Thursday nights at Milk were a great example. While maybe it wasn't the best room or platform for the genre, it's been a home. It's been something that I think that anybody who really appreciates techno in the city has at least passed through. I think that it takes a bit of trust on business owners' parts, and if something has the staying power like that Thursday night has, why haven't they given them a bigger platform? Why haven't they given them a bigger sound system? Why there's like all these little things that again, I mean, I hate to say it, but they're outside of our control. Well,
I have to say that I feel like, going back to what we said right at the very beginning, a lot of that comes from from the business perspective. It comes from who's gonna actually show up and spend money, whether it's at the door, at the bar, whatever. And I feel like if those events outgrew the space, the venue owners would be like, hey, let's move you to a bigger space, because we see this happening. But they still haven't outgrown that little room. I mean, I've been part of the Punchies group for years, and we had our room, and that was our thing. And we could have a room that size, but we weren't a main floor sized crowd. And the quality was there, and the people were there, and I think the community was there. I just think the community was small.
Yeah.
And I think what we can do to grow that community, having been on the other side of it, being a partner in a venue, I can tell you most venue owners couldn't care less what music is playing in their main room on any night of the week. They would rather the floor was full 7 nights a week if it was possible, and they wouldn't care if it was polka music, if that's what would fill the floor. So if you build a community that's strong enough and big enough, the venue owners will take notice. And I think one of the unfortunate things, well, a double-edged sword, fortunate and unfortunate things, I think in the Denver and the Colorado electronic music scene, is that we have so many little groups that have each done a really cool thing that it's helped develop a cool community. However, they're not together.
Yeah.
And so they're constantly working against each other, and for as amazing as the Denver scene can be, when you look on we were talking last week about, there was one weekend a couple years ago or a year ago where you had, like, in the same weekend, you had like 6 major techno headliners over 3 days in Denver that you wouldn't see anywhere, and none of them were full. Whereas if these promoters would have just gotten their shit together and talked to each other and worked together and said, hey, I'm going to take Thursday this week. I'm going to take Friday. I'm going to take Saturday. Okay, I'm going to take Thursday next week, Friday, Saturday. And you spread those 6 artists out. You've got, over a 2-week period, the same 6 artists, and every single event is full. And all of those groups work together to promote each event, and everyone comes off with a great event. And nobody does that in this town. Nobody does.
I think it's funny because this reminds me of something well in the past. When I was putting out the concert calendars pretty religiously on this station, I got inspired to be like, well, why isn't there a spreadsheet? And I think it was you, Alex, who said, well, there was a spreadsheet, just no one used it. Is that you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there were. I am not going to name names, but there were plenty of times when there were conflicts, and that's a big blow. I mean, it's a major investment to fly people out from around the world, and then have the tools, have systems in place, and then just you know, kind of unfortunately, like the way that I would take it is like a bit of either lack of caring or disrespect. It's got to be one of the two, you know.
Mhm.
And you know, that calendar included everything from AEG all the way down to Funky Buddha when it was a thing.
Mhm.
And you know, after that just kind of got forgotten. We like, let's see, it was like Sorted, Deep Club, Nocturnal, like a few ambient things, peer review, like a few of these smaller crews got together and basically said, you know, we're throwing after hours parties and this is a big investment, so let's help each other out. And it was successful, and I'll be the first to admit, fortunately it didn't, you know, both little silver lining of COVID, the events didn't happen, but I was looking at the wrong calendar and scheduled, shifted the same night as Hodge.
Ooh.
And it tore me up to be promoting A against one of my dear friends. B, I wanted to be at both shows. You know, it was gutting in a way. But yeah, I mean, there are obviously always going to be mistakes, and there are some that you know, work out in people's favor. I forget what Sorted show it was, but Mahesh brought out. I want to say it was Chris Liebing. No, it wasn't Chris Liebing. It was Macioplex. So he brought
yeah.
the Plex, and that show, like it had to end at 2:00, and Sorted had an event basically like down the street or around the corner or something, and you know, everybody spilled out of that and went to the Sorted show. So it was dead until 2:00, but it, you know, they turned a profit, and you know, it was additive to us to the sense of financials. Now, I don't know if the crowd was desirable or if they knew what they were getting into, or you know, all that kind of thing, because they didn't actually choose, like, going back to the trying, you know, you're wanting to be there, taking all the steps. They literally just spilled out and walked across the street and went into another area where there was another party. So who knows if that affected the party good or not.
I
And
think
that's where, if you want to build the scene, like you said, coordinating together builds the scene, because then you can say, okay, we know it's going to be this crowd here. Let's cater to that crowd with the after hours. Let's make it line up.
Yes.
Let's continue their night. And then they're going to go, man, that was the best night of my life, because I went from
Right.
this great show to this great show to this great show. And if you think about it, you know, you were talking about a calendar, which I think is really funny. I don't know if you've ever been to Ibiza, but when you go there, all of the bars that everybody goes to during the day have these whiteboards that
Like
show Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then across the top, it shows every one of the major clubs, and they show who's at each club and how much it costs to go to that club. And it's funny because if you look at those things, they're coordinated in that if you go to Ibiza for a week and you are into kind of big room diva house music, okay, you want to hear Defected Records style music for your entire week, you can say, okay, well, I can look at the schedule, and on Monday I'm going to Pasha, and on Tuesday I'm going to Space, and on Wednesday I'm going to Amnesia, and on Thursday I'm going here, and they coordinate it. But if you look,
those clubs don't have conflicting sounds that on those nights.
Exactly. There's
Okay,
one
yeah.
house night on Monday. There's one house night on Tuesday. But then if you look by club, you know, Amnesia has house one night, techno another night, disco another night, whatever. So they get their full 7 nights a week because they're coordinating with that crowd, and the crowd gets variety to go somewhere different.
So it's almost like the same crowd ping pongs through different clubs, and that same
and
crowd
they've got
of
their
people.
family.
And then, they become a community in itself.
You know, and imagine if Denver did something like that. You were talking about what makes Tuesday night a thing. Okay, well, right now, what we're doing, let's just take techno as an example. Right now, everybody is clawing and scratching for Friday nights and Saturday nights, and scraps and leftovers, and who can book first, and who can book bigger, and who can charge less, and whatever. Let's say we took those nights that everybody's working on and coordinated them out. And let's say, okay, you know, the bigger the bigger promoters are going to have the money and the resources to bring in bigger artists. So they're going to probably have the bigger nights, like the Friday nights, Saturday nights at the bigger places. And the after hours people are going to have the Friday night, Saturday night after hours that are the bigger ones. But then why don't the smaller promoters, why don't we coordinate together instead of them trying to scrap for leftovers on Friday and Saturday? Why don't we say, okay, here's the Monday night for the techno crowd. Here's the Tuesday night. And yes, they'll be smaller, but there's only one of them. So you don't have to divide it up times, 8 or 10 different crews on a Friday night and have everybody's show suck because there's 1/10 of the scene at each show. You have 1/10 of the scene at one show on a small night, and then a different show the other night and a different show the other night. That's how it used to be. And now it's gone totally away from that. And it's only 2 nights a week. And it's just basically 2 time slots too. It's kind of club slot and after hour slot, where it used to be a day party, an evening party, a club party, an after hours party, a day party the next day, whatever. And if we coordinated properly, we could totally do that in this town. We've got the people and the resources and the promoters and the DJs.
We have enough people.
We got money too.
We have enough patrons.
Can you imagine that unity?
Yeah, I think we have enough people if we spread them out like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
we don't when we divide them up.
Yeah, dividing is not the answer. But although I will say, and it took me a long time to come around to this way of thinking. Like I said, my formative years are spent in clubs. I hated it, but I went because I loved the music. As soon as I found the underground, I was very partial to that, and I avoided, and actually, discredited and talked down going to clubs or club atmosphere. And I think that there's also a divide there. I would venture to say that. And I think that a part of it has to do with communities that are in between the two, sure. But, I think that there could be, I'll say this. I think that since the fall of a dedicated nightclub, AKA NORAD, in the city, has caused a bit of that divide. I mean, I miss NORAD. I would go to NORAD in a heartbeat.
NORAD's sick.
Yeah, like a great sound system, small room. Like I would go see Hot Sense 82 or something there, and then go to an after hours, just because it's like totally different music, and it's not something that I'm particularly partial to, but I would enjoy the crowd and the atmosphere. But I don't particularly want to go to a nightclub where there's multiple levels, and one of them's a hip hop level, and one of them's a country level, and I have a girl turning to me and being like, "You hear it? Wait for it. Wait for it." And I can't handle that. So, I think that Denver also has to grow a bit, fiscally in order to expand its options in a way.
I think though, when you have those multiple room clubs, one of the things that we saw having 2 rooms at Absinthe House, and I saw it, we used to see it also at Beta when we were in the lounge with Punchies, is that you can be the kind of gateway to get one crowd filtered into another crowd.
Right.
And right now, because we don't have that, and because the communities are so segmented, we don't get any overlap. And I remember we used to always talk about this with the Punchies guys, is that we would play, if I was playing the early set there, I would play stuff that was more accessible. It was techno that was more accessible to the dubstep crowd that was going to be downstairs, the 18, 19, 20-year-old crowd that was there for dubstep, because you remember how they would just kind of wander around and be like, well, my guy's not on yet, so I'm going to see what's going on in these other rooms. And if you played the right stuff, they would stay in the lounge and go, whoa, this is weird music. I've never heard this before, but I kind of like this. And then all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, we've started this spark. We've started to open their mind a little bit. And yeah, they leave and go back down to the main show, but then they're going to think it's second time and say, hey, I liked that before. I'm going to go listen to that the next time. And then you start to expose them to new artists. And that's how you grow the scene. And right now our scene is so segmented that it's like, well, I'm not going to go to a hip hop club and go to a second room to hear techno, where, you know what, maybe if we had a second room playing techno in the hip hop club, maybe we'd peel off 3 or 5 or 10 people from the hip hop club that then become techno heads over time, you know?
So Electronic Tuesdays brings me to this. So Electronic Tuesdays was a Cervantes. And as we all know now, there's a large overlap between like the quote unquote sacred bass scene and the jam band scene. And so Cervantes, their bread and butter was always like jam bands or funk or whatever, bluegrass or anything like that. And then in their main room, that would be that. And then in the side room were electronic, Cervantes' other side, where the, bass music would be happening. Obviously smaller, but at a certain point, they would open up the doors to both sides, and both sides would be able to mix and interact with each other. And therefore to expose, crowds that, weren't really into electronic music. Maybe they were into funk or whatever, but they hear this and they're like, well, that's just some cool psychedelic music to them. This is fresh. I haven't heard something like this. So maybe, they're out for another show on that Tuesday, and then they see the door open back up and they're like, oh, maybe I'll go check out the other side now because my dude isn't on, or, this is second set and first set didn't really quite do it for me. So, or set break or whatever. So I'm going to go check out over there. And I think that was a large part of their success. Also, I think a large part of that success was the attitude of clubs versus venues. And Eric and I were talking about this a few weeks ago, where people expect to kind of get in for free for clubs. They go for the guest list experience, a certain exclusivity. If you can get yourself on a guest list as a 21-year-old, you think you're really freaking cool. Come on, we're all there at that age. You get on a guest list.
But then you pay $12 for a drink.
Yeah, and then you pay $12 for a drink, but somebody who got you in, so therefore you're cool or whatever. But with a venue, you're paying the ticket. You don't get guest lists unless you win tickets or you're friends with the artist or something like that. It's a completely different attitude. So everyone who was going into these shows at Cervantes were paying to go there. I understand that submission ones were, they required tickets, however, but they were cheap at the same time, but they still required some sort of barrier to entry at the same time. So maybe there's some sort of maybe that's a solution, because you guys were all talking about, how people would explore different rooms, like in beta.
I mean, I do think that Eric has a point. I don't know that there are many pretty wide gaps or fissures between genres, but I mean, like a Black Box. Black Box had Punches come out. I had events there monthly for almost 2 years. In the side room. It's dubstep in the main room, and then, house or techno in the side room. And then I'm thinking of vinyl, for example. I mean, Brennan did a great job of turning that club around from really primarily hip hop into a house scene, and welcoming a different audience. And he, as you go up, you see hip hop. I mean, I think even on the patio, there's hip hop at night, and so there's a little bit of crossover there. And then I know Beta, just got shut down or whatever, or they shifted gears away from.
Hey guys,
they're a different owner. Yeah,
I gotta head out. So.
I gotta cut out soon here too.
Okay. Yeah.
I gotta take care of some little ones.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right, guys. I'll see you next time.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
Good to see you, Chris.
Later, buddies.
But to my point, there are these little things, but I don't know that there's any home is my issue. Mm-hmm. That's where there's no place that you can, like we've talked about, there's no place that I personally trust as a club.
Yeah.
I can go, and maybe I don't love it every night, but I can go and enjoy the atmosphere, and I can enjoy the patrons. I can enjoy the programming and the lighting. There's no place dedicated that I can trust as a nightclub. And I think that is a bit of something that it's something that I'm trying to tackle and work on a personal level. And I'm fortunate to have the platform that I do through my work, but there's nothing concrete, and I'm working to do my part. Obviously, it is not going to be just me. It can't be just me. It would take a community, and I think speaking to Eric's point of many promoters working against each other, and instead let's work together and spread it out. If we had a home, we could have a month. Everybody could have a monthly. It wouldn't matter what day it was. They would be home. So I think there's, like I said, there's a bit of work to be done there.
It's still early.
It's hard too, because there's when you have the same place that is a home, it gives you a place you feel comfortable with, but then it becomes difficult to keep it fresh, because you're going to the exact same space every time. Even though the artists change, music is similar and the venue's exactly the same every time. So that's where it makes it a challenge. And I know that, with like the places in Ibiza that I was mentioning, or even what we used to do at Absinthe House, is that we would try to make it so that, we were your Thursday night home if you were into this style of music. We were your Friday night home if you were into this style of music, your Saturday night home. And then we tried to have always in our second room something that was different,
like polarized,
but also complementary. So it was something where you felt like you had a chance to pull people over. I mean, I used to really enjoy playing in our back room when it was like the Thursday night ladies night out front. It was like the college crowd party, top 40 commercial music in the main room. But I would always play, kind of deep house, tech house and techno in the back, and stuff that was accessible, but there was definitely underground music. And it was funny because it was all college students in the main room. And then what we would find was, slowly but surely, all of the international students would find us. And so the back room then became packed full of international students. Then it became, you know what? We want to go hang out where the international students are. And so we started to draw a crowd that way. And it got to the point where our back room was absolutely jam-packed wall to wall all the time. Never big enough to fill the main room, but we started doing main room events on the off nights and started doing rooftop events on the off nights with that same crowd, and kind of cross marketing. But the idea was to build the crowd off of, siphoning off 5 people every Thursday night from the main room crowd. And you do that 20 Thursdays in a row and you've got 100 people. And all of a sudden you've got this little core that you can move around and make into something.
Yeah. I mean, I think that really the organic growth is what's important here, right? I think that's what we're all speaking to. I think, I think Denver's come a long way, even in the 10 years that I've been here. It's,
even in the last,
and I think organic
2 years,
growth, it's funny
it's
because
been
it doesn't
exponential. In the last 2 years,
and I think that the hard thing with organic growth is that it doesn't come from marketing. It comes from awareness. And so if people know that something's going on, and if people, happen across it and find it, then you can get that organic growth. You're never going to get it by trying to sell someone on an event that has never heard of an artist or whatever. It's an uphill battle that you'll never win.
Yeah, it's, just to, we've been doing this for a little while, so I guess we should finish it up on this particular topic. But, just as some sort of closure to that, I just want to say that I've been looking back at the calendars I used to put together while we were talking, because I was trying to figure out what weekends were the really big conflicting ones. And you look at the density of these banners that I had, these banner calendars, and within the year that I started, the year and a half while I was making these things before I switched over to the format I use now, the density increases pretty extremely over time. So there definitely is an organic growth, and we're discussing all these, issues right now, but I think there is, we should also acknowledge what has happened And, you know, when I first started putting this together, there would be, you know, there would probably be like 8 events the entire week between, you know, Denver and Boulder. And then within a year, I couldn't even put everything on in the banner. So, you know, there is an organic growth going on, I think.
And I think that one of the things, though, where we might be shooting ourselves in the foot, though, is, are we doubling and tripling the number of events while keeping the scene the same size?
Right. Quantity versus quality.
Because then everybody fails.
Yep.
Or are we organically growing and then expanding the events bigger and bigger because we've got more demand? And I fear that has been happening, you know, just up until COVID started, I fear is that it's the former, not the latter. I think we were just dividing the same pie into smaller and smaller pieces.
Yeah.
And that's doomsday for every single promoter.
I also think, you know, I'm not absent from this comment. I think that you know, people come to learn very quick that throwing events is not easy. The first event that I put on had probably 1/8 of the sound that it should have based on the room size, and one of the speakers actually lit on fire because we were pushing it so hard.
And that becomes legendary, and then you blow up, right?
I mean, it was great. It was a great. Actually, that was the highest grossing party we ever did.
Really?
Yeah, it was like a false positive on the first event, you know?
Beginner's luck or just novelty.
Yeah, and you want to know what's funny is that was actually a $10 all-you-can-drink event. And we made
like a college party.
So much money on it.
They just take a bunch of jungle juice or something, you know, go straight, you know.
Whatever was on sale. I think the most expensive whiskey we had was Jack Daniel's. But I think we got it at like $12 a pop. And we also, you know, unfortunately, a lot of liquor laws have changed, which maybe this is a subject for another time. But in the past year and a half, 2 years, liquor laws have changed where if you're a company that either you know, creates liquor or beer, it's much more difficult and much more regulated to donate any of it, even if it's going bad, or even if it's gone bad, to other parties outside of your own business. So actually, you know, what was like 7 or 8 years ago, we put on an event, and Great Divide basically gave us 4 kegs and I think 3 cases of different beer because it was just going to go bad in the next week. So that was easy, you know. We could offer beer for all you can drink, so why not go and invest $500 in alcohol and hope that we get 50 people there to cover that, you know? And then plus we're paying artists, so maybe we're hoping for 80 people, but then 400 people showed up because we had this relationship. We found a venue that was literally adjacent to the Great Divide distribution center. So we just struck up conversations with them while we were outside smoking or whatever. And they said, great, yeah, like take some of our old beer. Why not? Can you throw 15 of us on a guest list? Absolutely. You're giving us $400 worth of beer, so why not?
Yeah.
So, you know, it's gotten a bit more difficult as, you know, outside sources, I would say, you know, just regulations have become, you know, stronger and stronger. It's getting harder, and you have to seek sponsorships in different ways, you know, and then when does it become the Mutech where you're putting a plant in front of a Mac computer because Microsoft is sponsoring the stage? You know, it's a Techno toes a line, and it's very hard to appease the crowd while also being able to turn a profit, you know?
Yeah, I mean, some of the best.
Or even break even.
Yeah.
Or even break even, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the real goal.
I genuinely
turn a profit,
promoters like you and a lot of the other good promoters that are out there are not in it to make money, but they're also not in it to lose money.
Right.
So it's like, hey, let's just like support people enough so they can at least cover their expenses, you know?
It's like the weed dealer who sells like by the ounce or something like that. They're just doing it so they can get high for free, you know? It's the same sort of thing. So I don't know. I think a lot of good things have been said. I guess just my last question before we go is, Are you saying that regulations are harder now than they used to be? Like they can't
They've
donate
tightened
the
up,
beer.
yeah.
They can't donate the beer like they used to. They have to
Yeah,
like
so
dispose of it in a certain way, or
I don't quite know the legalities, so I can't get very specific.
Yeah.
But there have been many lawsuits placed on Budweiser because they were basically incentivizing like private companies to purchase their product, whether it be by buying X amount of kegs in order to get them to pay for, I don't know, like the Sunday ticket for football.
Yeah, I can actually speak to what happened.
Yeah, I imagine Eric can much better.
Came to be, it's what it was big companies like AB InBev and Miller Coors and people like that were sued by a lot of the small producers and distributors, a lot of the craft brewing companies, saying that we're being squeezed out of individual businesses and out of markets because we don't have the funds behind us to be able to do all these free giveaway incentives to bars.
no.
No.
It's going so well. Oh, it's such a good point. All right, I'm ready to get right now. No, I'm kidding.
No, he'll come back. He'll come back.
No, not yet. Not yet.
No.
Okay, there you are.
Oh,
Wait.
now I can hear you guys.
Yes, you're good.
Okay, so these guys basically were they were using things like, they said, okay, well, we're gonna give you all the glasses for your bar that say Budweiser on them, and we'll give them to you for free, so your bar doesn't have to spend $1,000 buying glassware. And in exchange, you're gonna give us exclusivity to all of your tap handles in your draft system. So we're gonna squeeze out all the small guys, so they can't get a place. And it was things like glassware and umbrellas for your patio that said, Budweiser on them. And
Events
it was
as well.
events, and it was neons in the front. So the only company really that can throw money at events anymore anywhere is Red Bull, because they're not held accountable for the liquor laws, which is why you see Red Bull on all these events now, is because the liquor laws don't apply to them.
Which
But
unfortunately,
what it was, interestingly enough, it was all these little companies that sued the big companies and said they shouldn't be allowed to do this. And what it did was it made it so the little companies couldn't do it anymore either.
Oh, no. Well, we should get like Yerba Mate to do it. That's always, they have a lot of money. It's a little less broy.
Speaking of that Red Bull point, Red Bull Music Academy shut down.
Yeah. Rest in peace. That was really good.
Yeah, I mean, God, Brian Kosenek did a great job programming that for a while, and actually, one of the founding team members of Red Bull Music Academy lives here in Colorado. He was the junior director at the MCA for a while when I met him. Now he's a dad, and he's working on different things, and he's got great taste, but he's just not out and about doing the thing anymore. So yeah, I mean, there's a bit of unfortunately, we can't seek Red Bull anymore. So yeah, let's go to Yerba Mate.
Yeah, Yerba Mate. They might. I love it. That's like that stuff will keep me going all night. I'll have to pee every 20 minutes, but whatever.
Yeah,
It's good stuff. I'm a fan. But anyways, should we wrap it up?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks, Eric. Thanks, Alex. I appreciate you being on here. If you ever want to come back, let me know. And Eric, pleasure as always.
Yeah, good to see you. Great to chat, Alex.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, I've seen you
Alex
around
and Alex.
today. Nice to actually say hello.
Yeah, for sure. Hopefully we'll see each other at an event at some point when we can all get together in the same room again.
Yeah, and hey, I would be remiss if I didn't say thanks for doing all the groundwork here in Colorado.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's it's a thing. So yeah, thanks guys. I appreciate it, and till another time. Cheers.
Sounds good.
Cheers, guys.
We'll talk soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Soon. Take care.